All right, so here we have a 2014 Chrysler Town & Country. All right, so we tried to change the oil to get rid of the ticking sound. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go in and take a look at the rocker arms and the camshaft to see where that tick is coming from. That's pretty common on these cars. So we're going to start by removing our engine cover first. So we just want to pull up on it. I'm going to remove our air intake tube and our top of our filter housing. So we just got a couple clips. All right, let's go ahead and just pop that off. A little electrical connector here for our air ambient temperature. All right, so now we want to go ahead and get our intake off. So we have a bracket back here we need to remove. There's a 10 millimeter, should be here. We just found it floating around. Someone's obviously been into this before, so we'll go ahead and take this back one off. We'll move some of our wires out of the way. We need to get underneath this bolt. There's another stud we need to get to. Let's see. Okay, so we want to remove this stud here. It is I'm going to use a 13 millimeter. It could be a half or a 13. I have a deep well socket. Okay, so we'll go ahead and remove some of our electrical connections. Okay, we'll go ahead and lay this off to the side. Go ahead and take our vacuum lines off, kind of just push them back a little bit. All right, so when I have a hose that I can't get off, what I do is just use a pair of pliers and twist it. You can hear it break free. Just keep on removing some hoses. Hold down for our radiator hose. We'll go ahead and pop that out. Okay, so we should have two little 10 millimeter bolts in this bracket. You can kind of see they're not even lined up to the bracket, and the bolts are missing there, so we'll have to address that once we put it back together. All right, so now we want to remove, we have a bunch of bolts right around the center of the intake. All right, so they are 8 millimeter. All right, we'll just go ahead and lift it up, see if we got anything else connected. Oh, all right. Yeah, so we got a little insulating cover. We'll go ahead and remove that. We got a lot of dust and everything. We should probably blow all this stuff off before we start breaking into the motor. All right, just to keep us safe from getting debris in the motor, I'm just going to go ahead and put some paper towels in our intake right, so we're going to go ahead and remove our coils. All right, so we have 6 of them. We have a 10 millimeter bolt and a connector. So we'll go ahead and remove our 10 millimeter bolts. All right, so we want to go ahead and get all of our hold downs off of our valve cover. All right, so under here we have our cam sensors. All right, so we need to first remove our connectors. All right, so it looks like we have 3 Torx. All right, so we're going to start with our rear one first. We have 3 T25 bolts holding it in. All right, so we had our 3 little Torx around the outside, and then I just had to wiggle it to get it out of position. All right, so what we want to do with these is they need to go back in the exact same spot, and there's 4 of them. 2 in the front cylinder head, or 2 in the back cylinder head, and 2 in the front. So you can label them however you want, as long as you know how you label them. I'm going to label them 1, 2, 3, and 4, so this will be a number 4. We'll go ahead and put number 4 on it. All right, so that way I know he's number 4. All right, so now we'll go ahead and remove the next one. All right, so we're going to do the same thing to the front cylinder head. We've already pulled our cover off. We'll go ahead and take our connections loose. All right, same thing. We'll go ahead and remove those 3 bolts. All right, so we have some other cam sensors here. We're going to go ahead and remove this one and the one in the back. All right, so these are also Torx. I believe they're going to be a T30. I'm using a T27. It's a little loose, so I just can't find a T30 in the toolbox. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these bolts now. Okay, so we've got a little lock. We're going to remove our connector. So next thing we need to do is remove our PCV valve, which is in the back here. So we'll take our tube off first. All right, so our PCV is held on by a T25 Torx. All right, so we have, looks like we have two. All right, so we'll go ahead and remove those. Right, so we just want to kind of pop our harness off the back here. So we just got little push pins or little hold downs. Just want to kind of yank it up. Another one right here in the center. All right, so you can see that's what we were. All right, so that's these are our hold downs. There's 3 of them in the back. We got to pop those off. So you just got to yank them up. Same way with the front. We need to take, this is our injector wiring harness. We just need to pop it off the valve cover. So we're just going to kind of push everything inward. We're not going to try to disconnect our fuel injectors. We're going to leave those alone. All right, so now we need to take off these 2 studs back here where our hold down was. That's part of our valve cover bolts. As they go around, these ones are plastic. We'll take those ones off first. All right, so we'll go ahead and remove these. This is an 11mm socket for these studs. All right, so now we want to go ahead and remove all of our bolts. Those were just caps to bolts. So they weren't actually, didn't actually hold anything down. All right, so these are going to be 8mm. Looks like we're going to need a deep well 8 for all the back ones. Oh, yep, at least 3 of the back ones. All right, so we'll go ahead and start knocking these off. All right, that should be all of our bolts. Just run our hand around just to make sure. All right, so we should just be able to wiggle it up. All right, so we think we got it. I think we're just hitting where the PCV is, so I think we just have to come up and somehow slide it. So I was trying to get this side to lift higher.
Difficult.
All right, so she's tucked in there pretty good. You basically have to pull this top piece up first and then slide it past the end of this snout here that was for our PCV. All right, so we'll go ahead and do the front one now. So kind of the same process. We're going to go ahead and take all of our perimeter bolts down. All right, so now we got our valve cover loose. We'll go ahead and pull it up. All right, so now that we have our valve covers off and we're taking a look at it, we did have a video. We tried to add some marble mist oil in the oil chains and try to get rid of a tick that we had. Once we pulled it apart, we did find that we do have a bad rocker arm and it's wiped out the cam. All right, so we're going to be replacing the camshaft too, and definitely that rocker arm. We need to do some more inspections on the rest of the rocker arms. We'll get to that a little further in the video. All right, so before we get to doing the camshaft stuff and getting the motor turned over to top dead, I'm just going to go ahead and pull out all of my spark plugs. That way it makes it easier to turn the engine over. All right, so I just have a 5/8 spark plug socket, a long extension. I'll just go ahead and fish out all of our plugs. All right, so now that we got our spark plugs out, to make it easier to turn the motor, I have a 27mm socket. I'm going to put it down on the crankshaft, the crank bolt, and I'm going to turn the motor over until I get my marks lined up. And once I get there, I'll show you a picture of what that looks like, but I'm just going to go ahead and turn the motor over to get it to top dead center now. All right, so my first indicator is starting to come around. I have two little dimples, one on the phaser and one on the cam. We want to get those straight up. All right, so we're pretty close to straight up there. All right, so just to recap what we did, I went and down here and turned the crankshaft. I turned so I could find my dimples. Okay, these are going to be the dimples for the phaser lined up to the cam. I need them to be upwards. All right, then once they're upwards, then I just fine-tuned it until I get my arrows on the front one lined up. So our left side, bank 2, arrows lined up, and our bank 1, our right side head, has the lines lined up. Okay, because they both have the same markings, but it's lines and arrows, and that tells us we're at top dead center. All right, so one of the things that you need to do the job is you're going to need to buy the tool set for this 3.6. Comes with a bunch of different tools. All these weird wedges are to help you push back the tensioner, and then we got some blocks in there that lock the cam phasers together at the sprocket side. All right, so this is definitely a must. I mean, you can work through it without it, but it's a big pain in the butt. The tool makes everything easier. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pull out our alignment blocks. They are labeled left and right. All right, so our bank 1 is our right side head. Our bank 2 is our left side head. All right, so we're just going to go ahead and slip our blocks in. This is our right hand side. All right, just want to make sure we engage it in the teeth. All right, and we have our left hand side. We'll go ahead and get it placed in. All right, so before we start taking anything apart, we just need to mark some marks. That way we get the timing back the way we should. So we're going to mark the phaser and the cam and the chain at the same time, so we know exactly where we're going to put it back at. All right, so I'm going to use the marks here. We'll draw our mark over our chain. I'm going to come all the way down too, so I can see it from all different directions. Just like we did our cam sensors, we want to put back our phasers in the same spot. So if we're moving them, we definitely need to know they're going back in the same spot. So I'm just going to go ahead. And number them the same way. I start bank 1, and I'll come this way. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Just more reference marks, so you get nothing mixed up. All right. So now that we got all of our cam phasers and our chain all marked, we're going to go ahead and remove our Oill control bolts out of the front of our phasers. Well, at least loosen them all up, and then we'll go back and take them out one by one. So this is a 36 millimeter socket that I have. All right, so we have our tools still in there. All right, so we'll start with removing our rear sprockets first. All right, so I got both bolts loose. I'll go ahead and pull out my tool. All right, I'm going to start with number 2 first. So I'm going to pull the Oill control bolt out of the front. All right, so once we have that out, we just want to go ahead and wiggle our phaser off. All right, so then we can pull our chain down. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and group them together on a little piece of cardboard on the floor. All right, so now we need to remove our cam caps, our camshaft caps here. So that's a T30. All right, so we'll go ahead and loosen those all up. All right, so these are numbered. They start off with an arrow facing forward, and we have number 4, number 3, number 2, and number 1. So we'll make sure that they go back in the same positions. Yeah, we'll go ahead and lift our exhaust cam out, or this is our intake cam. All right, and this was our exhaust cam. We'll go ahead and loosen it up too. All right, so here's our intake cam. The ticking that we've been trying, well, what brought us here and the oil leak and all that is this camshaft lobe is worn out pretty bad. This one's not. See, it has the step, and this one has no step. All right, so this is his rocker arm. All right, so that pushed that rocker arm all the way down. It's not even spinning. And it just started cutting a groove into it. So it wasn't even rolling. It doesn't even roll. This one next to us is pretty good still. And you can see there's our roller, and it rolls around just fine. All right, so that's where the failure in this motor starts to happen. That's why we're replacing 2 camshafts. We did it on this one too. Shot the roller right down to the bottom, starts grooving itself out. And I think I have one more on this side right here. That's why we're going to break them down. We're going to replace all of the rocker arms, and then just the lifter, these 2 lifters here that were the worst. We're going to go ahead and replace those lifters. Yeah, I see that one is, the lifter's coming apart. It's already broke. I'm going to have to fish that one out. All right, so we'll go ahead and remove all the rest of our rocker arms off there. See, you're starting to get a groove on that one. All right, so these parts are revised. They are Mopar parts I'm putting back on, and they are superseded. Normally that means that that part has been replaced by a better part. All right, so when I pull this lifter out, that's a good lifter. It's still together. You know, this part is this oil compressed in here. It's like a hydraulic spring is basically what the lifter is. This one here, I pull the top right out of it. It's broke. And just kind of going around, I want to make sure they all slide good, they're not stuck, the tops aren't busted. They're all popped out, okay, so that's a good thing. All right, so now we're ready to put our valve train back together. We did find the one lifter, so we got a lifter from Mopar. We'll just go ahead and put that in its spot. All right, so we're going to go ahead and replace all of the rocker arms with brand new ones. All right, so we just want to go ahead and start putting them in their place. All right, so now we're ready to put our cams in. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and just take a clean towel and just kind of wipe them out a little bit, just in case anything got on them while it's been apart. And I have some assembly lube. You could just pour oil on it if you wanted to. I'm going to use some assembly lube. It does have like a molly inside of it that'll help seat everything. So I'm just going to go ahead and put some dabs on the journal. All right, so here we have our new camshaft. All right, so this is our exhaust side. So we want to locate our dimple here. We want to make sure that dimple is facing up. We're going to go ahead and set it down with that dimple up. Set it into its place. Trying to see how far it rotated, because it will want to sit. Until we get it tightened in, it will want to sit on the lobes and stuff. All right. Same thing, we'll go ahead and give a couple dots of our assembly lube on the top side. All right, so now we're ready to put our caps on our exhaust cam. They are marked. All right, so we have one exhaust and a forward arrow. So that's going to be forward and number 1. All right, so we'll go ahead and start putting our caps on. We just work our way back. This is number 2. All right, so here we have our intake cam. All right, so everything is marked, you know, right side intake, you know, so you do have some indicators on there. All right, so we'll go ahead and set our new cam down. We want to make sure our dot is upwards. All right, we'll go ahead and put some assembly lube on the tops. All right, so we just want to check to make sure that we got our caps in the right position, the right sides and all that. All right, so now we're ready to torque our cap bolts down. So it's going to be 84 inch-pounds. And we're just going to start, you know, in the middle and just work our way out each way. So we're kind of, you know, it's 4 caps. It's hard to pick the middle. All right, so now we're ready to put our phaser back on. All right, so we have our one we marked number 1. All right, and we have our dot we want to line up. All right, so we need to rotate our cam just a little bit back. All right, so I just had to wiggle the cam back a little bit. Now we will verify our alignment. All right. We'll go ahead and put our oil control bolt back in. So we'll go ahead and line our chain back up on our phaser, make our link in their same spot. twist the cam towards us, we should be able to get that slack. Alright, so we want to verify our dots, verify our lines in the front. Alright, so we'll go ahead and put our oil control bolt back in. We'll put our block back in, that way we can torque that side when we get there. We'll just put it in there just to keep it like that. Now we'll work on the front side. All right, so we've already loosened all of our oil control bolts. We'll go ahead and remove our block. We'll go ahead and remove our phaser. All right, so now we'll go ahead and remove our camshaft so we can put our new rocker arms in. So whatever we had going on there, I'll pull this one off and I'll show you exactly it. All right, so how the motor sat, you know, we could have rotated the cam a little bit to relieve that pressure. But this lobe right here is on the downward facing. So it had tons of pressure on this spring for the valve. So as we loosened it, it cocked up like that, and it caught itself in this groove, the thrust part of the camshaft. That's what keeps the camshaft from going back and forth. So it was just a super tight fit, and it was just bound and binded up. So I had to put the pressure of the cap back on to relieve this, to push the spring back down to pull this end up to pop it. Sometimes they get caught like that, not often. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and replace all these. I'm just going to pull them out one by one and kind of look at them. This was our culprit over here. Kind of check our lifters out, make sure that they're not stuck in the bore, they're not broken. Alright, so here's our intake cam of our left side head. You can see this one has just barely started to get the groove versus this one. So we replaced these. These were on the bank one, the right side head. I went ahead and replaced both cams over there, but this one here, since it's just the outside, the lobe is still good. I'm just going to take a little bit of emery cloth and I'm just going to work that groove out of it. Try not to remove any material, just what's built up, because it still has a good lobe, it still has a good riding surface. So you can see where it rides. So cleaning up the edge isn't really going to affect that. You know, so I'm just going to go ahead and emery cloth this down just to take off that knifed edge. And then we'll go ahead and reassemble after that. All right, so now we're ready to place our new rocker arms on. All right, so now we have our rocker arms in their place. We're going to go ahead and set our cam. We've already got some lube on our journals. Want to make our dot up. All right, so this cam is the one we had the lobe down. So let's find a spot where the lobe isn't keeping us up. All right, so we're this way on the notch. So once we put it in, we're going to have to turn it when we get our phaser back on. All right, so we'll go ahead and give some assembly lube to our camshaft. We're going to torque down these caps. There is a sequence. I just figured that out. It's kind of the same thing we're doing. Boom, boom. It goes like this to this to this to this. All right, but the more important thing is going to be to get the camshaft in a position with no load of the spring, the valve and spring on the lobe. All right, so the front camshaft, the left side here, we have these little indexing holes. We want to be off in this direction, and that takes the load off. All right, so now we would be able to torque these down. The rear one, which we already kind of had going on, they're going to be facing straight up. All right, so that's something we didn't reference when we did that, but that is an important thing. All right, so here's a diagram from the service manual. This is the cut off with the cutaway. So you have these bolts here. There's a cover, so you can't see any of that stuff. So this is all blind, just trying to show you. So one of the tools, this one here, this is that pin. We have to fish it through. We're going to have like a little pawl right here. We need to pull up on it. Once we pull up on that pawl, that'll free up the tensioner. And then that's where our next tool comes in, and it pushes back our guide rail for our tensioner and pushes the piston back in. So that's what we're doing. It's hard to see, or it's a blind operation. So this is what we have going on. All right, so here we are on the left side head, and we have a tensioner with a ratchet in it. So this is what our tool is for. We showed a little illustration of where that's located. There's a hole on the side, so we want to kind of put this in the hole and pick it up. All right, so I'm in the hole. All right, so I can pick it up. Then we have our wedge tool. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and wedge our tool in. That pushed back to the hydraulics there. All right, so I want to pull up on the detent, push our tensioner back. supposed to be able to put a locking pin in there, and I can't get that to work out. So I don't think we need to do that. Let's just go ahead. Let's just go ahead and do it just by pressing it. Now we can let go. We can relieve that tensioner. So let's go ahead and put our cam phaser on. All right, so our dot's the dot. All right, so we do need to rotate the cam. And go ahead and put the bolt in. All right, so we want to bring our cam back around to top dead center. All right, so we're on top dead center. All right, so we need to do this one too. Go ahead and start to get it into place. All right, see how it clicks back on you, so got to be careful. All right, so we just got it kind of balanced like that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pull up our clip. Push our tensioner back just to apply our tool in. All right, so that's pushing the tensioner back, so we got slack in it. Line our chain up on our mark. I'm going to kind of rotate this cam a little bit. All right, we popped into place. We'll install our oil control bolt. All right, so we'll go ahead and install our block back in our sprockets so we can torque our oil control bolt. All right, so we're at 118 foot-pounds. All right, we'll go ahead and pull our blocks out. All right, so what we want to do next is we just want to go ahead and just pour some oil across the camshaft so we can get the rocker arms all lubed for the first startup, just to make sure they have all their lubrication. Okay, so now we have our valve covers. We got a valve cover gasket set from Auto Parts Direct Use, so we're going to go ahead and replace all of our gaskets. All right, so we'll go ahead and set our front side in. And that all of our spark plug tubes came through our holes right. All right, so just go ahead and get our bolts started. All right, so now that we have our valve covers on, we'll go ahead and start putting all of our wiring back into its little hold downs. And so we'll just work our way around and get everything fitted back on. All right, so now we're ready to put our cam position sensors back in. All right, and our sensor plug with our lock. All right, now we'll go ahead and do the rear one. All right, so before we go ahead and plug that in, we'll go ahead and put our PCV in. All right, so here we have a new PCV that we got from Auto Parts Direct U. We'll go ahead and put it in its location. We have 2 mounting bolts. Okay, so now we can make our electrical connection for our sensor onto our hold down. All right, so now we're ready to install our variable valve timing solenoids to the front of our valve cover. All right, so we have them marked. So this was number 4. So we'll just go ahead and start putting them back into place. All right, we'll go ahead and tighten up all of our bolts. All right, so we'll go ahead and make our electrical connections. All right, so now we're ready to install our rear sensors. All right, so here we got some plugs from Auto Parts Direct U. Let's see, these are Denso. Champion is original. Denso also is a pretty good plug, so we're going to put the Denzos in. All right, so we just want to make sure we got the same plug, same reach, all that good stuff. We'll go ahead and get our new plugs out of the box and ready to go in. All right, so we're ready to install our new plugs now. All right, so now that we have our spark plugs in, we'll go ahead and put our coils back on. Goes like that, right? Yeah. Yep. All right, so we're ready to put our intake on. We'll go ahead and I got some new gaskets from Auto Parts Direct U. We'll go ahead and put those on. All right, so now we're ready to put our intake on. All right, so now we need to put our bracket back on. All right, go ahead and put our hold down back on, our wire hold down. All of our clips and connectors. Our two studs. This is for our cover that goes on, so let's go back on the back here, on the back of our valve cover. All right, this is our PCV. We'll kind of route it through. And now we're ready for our air box and our intake snorkel. All right, and those two studs in the back that we just put on the valve cover, that's where this box snaps into. All right, we have our connector for our ambient air temperature, our breather, Fasten our air box back. We did forget 2 vacuum lines, all right, so we have one here and then the other one for our brake booster. All right, our last thing will be this cover. All right, so now we have it all back together. We have one last step. We need to reset or relearn the phasers. We do have a snap-on scan tool here, so we'll go ahead and see if we can access that now and get it done. If not, we'll have to take it to the dealer, but we'll at least give it an attempt.